Hi everybody, it's Doc Horowitz here to welcome you to our next module in our public relations course on planning and delivering persuasive presentations. Up to this point, you've had an opportunity to read about and experience and comment on your sense of what this thing called public relations actually is. And you've had some very interesting observations, and I would suspect that at the end of the day, the common theme and the essential element of public relations is this thing called persuasion. That's the concept that everything else, whether you're making a product, writing a media release, making a presentation, delivering a speech to an audience, all of it comes down to your ability to persuade others to do something essentially they don't have to do. This is very different than mandating, as a manager perhaps, the tasks that employees carry out. So public relations very much has this voluntary, if you will, and I say that in quotes because it's an awfully powerful skill and strategy that overcomes many obstacles that people may have to actually meeting the requests that people like yourselves might have. But this is what it's about. And you may have been struck by my attire this morning, which brings me back some 30, 40 years to my days as a young activist, if you will, when I and a group of citizens in a small town were fighting against a large oil company. I don't want to give that story away. You'll be reading about it and analyzing it a bit as you go through this next module. I assure you it was fun, but it was difficult. And it's not an accident. We happen to have won that initiative. We happen to beat back, if you will, the oil company keeping oil out of our town. But there was not an accident that happened. A lot of people had a lot of skill, and as you'll find, at the end of all of this lies the concept of the 4 phases of the persuasion process. That's what you want to take away from this module, that one way or another, whatever you do, say, write, speak, ultimately, your ability to persuade somebody comes down to whether or not you are implementing accurately the 4 phases of the persuasion process. And if you recall, or you're reading about it now, it has an acronym called AIDA, A-I-D-A, which stands for attention getter, as you're looking at my t-shirt, which all t-shirts essentially do when you think about it. They're designed to get people's attention. Well, this one certainly was, but this t-shirt all by itself did not allow us this victory in this small town. There were 3 other phases besides getting people's attention. You had to gain their interest or keep it going. The attention getter is designed to focus people on what it is you're trying to get them to do. After that, you got to do something. You have to have people engaged in your purpose or your product or your service if you're selling something. And all of that relies on details and storytelling about your particular product, service, idea, or even yourself. All of which you'll find in our later module involves the whole concept of branding. That's what it is. Because in the persuasion process, we're actually ultimately shaping the perception of an individual or a group that we want them to have about our organization, our products, our services, and indeed ourselves. That's the branding concept in a nutshell, if you will. So that interest is going to be followed by something called desire. After you've gotten folks really interested in your product, and perhaps you're talking about why it's a great product, its quality, its design, its graphics, whatever it might be, people have to then know, what do they do? And they'll do it naturally. They'll go into the next phase, which is desire. They'll either decide to support this or they'll reject it. And I'll leave that formula to you as to how they do that. But trust me, you can bet it begins with the words, know your audience. Because this is what you're doing. You're tailoring your messages, your presentations, your public relations products to specific audiences in order to persuade them and motivate them that your request is what they really ought to do and want to do. And finally, you want to end your presentations with a dramatic statement, if you will, or summary that is a call for action. You don't want to leave folks going, that was really exciting. Now what do I do? You tell them what to do. So that's, in brief, what this next section is all about. I'm going to share with you everything from speeches by very famous people and why they became so iconic. There wasn't an accident either. They knew their audience, they knew the persuasion process, they knew the language to use. You've been reading articles about language and knowing your audience, and regardless of your own comfort zone, you want to speak their language and not yours. You've discovered that. So now you're putting these pieces together and you're adding this whole next level of skills and strategies that make up the persuasion process. So with that, I invite you to engage in the many activities and readings and lecture perhaps that are going to acquaint you and help you to acquire this most valuable persuasive tool. Many of you talked about the word manipulation, and there's no question that public relations has been used and does get used in a manipulative way. That falls under the category of ethics. My role is to present you with the skills, the strategies, the concepts. Your role will be whether or not you take that to a level that is either highly ethical or perhaps unethical. And trust me, this is one profession where you will be challenged on your ethics and your ability to hold on to your core values while you appropriately persuade others with the requests to have that image that you are cultivating, which ultimately become the brand of your organization, your product, your service, and even yourself. Coming up next, planning and delivering powerful, persuasive presentations.